Okay, so on this simulation here, we're going to look to see what happens when perfume or an air freshener is placed on one side of a room. And what I really want you to follow is how those particles move, because when I looked at your pre-assessments, many of you drew straight arrows going from where the air freshener was to where you were on the side of the room. So this will actually help us see what's going on when we release some perfume. So we're going to release the perfume, and it's going to show up in the screen right down here. And you can sort of pretend that you're standing up here in this box here. So I want you to follow where the particles go from start to finish. So let's release those perfume molecules, and then I'm going to click on Trace. So you can see this guy here is getting traced. And think a little bit about how his movement goes. So he's bouncing around there. So when I asked you guys in class today what word would you use to describe that, people said crazy or chaotic or random were some of the words that I heard, among others too. So whatever way you would describe it is fine, but it's not a straight path at all. So when we're talking about particle movement in a gas, it is not one direct line from one corner to the other. So you can see this one order particle has had a really interesting path. There's other ones in here, so that's why you would smell it. It's not like this is the only particle you would smell. So I just wanted to show you guys that these particles in air are always moving around in that empty space, whether they're hot, cold, whatever they are, moving around as a gas. Okay, so here's the second demonstration that I wanted you to see today in class. So what I've got here is a container, or you can think of it as a room, that is divided in the middle with a hole in the middle. That's what this area right here is. It's a hole. Makes my screen flicker when I do that. And both sides right now are the same temperature, and we're going to be able to adjust the temperature on either side of that room. But before we do that, the first thing I'd like you to do is write down in your logbook what is the path that this one that's highlighted, what path is it following? How would you describe its motion? Okay, so next I'm going to change the temperature on the right side of the box here by using the slider here. So I'm going to increase it. The units don't really mean anything. They're kind of arbitrary units, but they're getting bigger. So I want you to watch for a little bit here, and I want you to really focus on the right side of the screen, and I guess you could compare that to the left as well. But in your logbooks, I want you to write down or describe the movement of the particles in the right. So talk both about the movement of them and the space between them. How has that changed as we increased the temperature? The next thing we're going to change is click this to go, is the movement of the particles on the left side. So right now this temperature is at 0.025. Again, those units don't really mean anything. They're all just relative. And I'm going to decrease that. Oh, baby's crying. So I'm going to decrease that to 0.010. So now it's quite a bit colder. So now in your logbooks, I want you to describe the movement of those particles while I go and tend to my crying baby. Alright, so Katie is now here with us, listening, but she stopped crying, so hopefully we won't be interrupted anymore. So the last thing that I want you to write down in your logbook is comparing or writing down what happened to the particles on the warm side, again on the right side. Did they all go to the top of that room? And then the ones on the cold side, did they all go to the bottom of that room? Because a lot of you wrote about that in your pre-assessments, about how the warm particles in the warm room, all the air would go to the top of the room, and then in the cold room, all the air would go to the bottom of the room. But does this data that we see here, does that actually support your that previous idea that you had? So go ahead and write that one down in your logbook. Alright, so the last thing that I want you guys to do is look back at question 4 on your pre-assessment, at your pictures of the warm room and the cold room, and how the particles moved. And now, given what you've seen here and what you've learned in class, I want you to rewrite your answer to that as clear as you possibly can, showing any changes that may have occurred in your thinking.